Jyoti, I think we should start proper panel discussion. Punita is not
I
ready,
think
I think.
in the meantime, Dr. Punita is taking care of her part. We can introduce the panelists, Dr. Dinesh, and we can start there and we
Yes,
can
can I have
save
TV
time.
of Dr. Pragnesh? Sir Amit?
But I think other panelists are not there. I mean,
No,
But
no, we
there,
will take everybody.
everybody
Dr.
is there,
Rita,
I think.
most of them are here.
Do we have
Okay. Most of them are yes. So we
he's a
can start,
well-known
I think.
person, Dr. Pragnesh Shah. We are lucky to have him, and we are going to have a wonderful panel with him. He's been organizing secretary AICOG Ahmedabad 2017 and Foxy recognized Basic and Advanced Laparoscopic Training Center, and he came to review our center when we got it Foxy recognized. That's when we formally met him first time, and I've been seeing him in most of the workshops, operating, discussing, and is a most genuine person and friendly person and a soft-spoken person we've met. And he's been past president Ahmedabad Obs and Gynae Society, past Foxy Endoscopy Committee chairperson, and I think he's got so many things to his credit. We are very fortunate to have him around. Welcome, Dr. Pragnesh, and you can start sharing your screen.
Thank you, madam, for your kind words. I'll just share the screen and so I can start the process. And meanwhile, you can introduce to all other.
Let me welcome Dr. Jyoti Malik again. She's such a friend and she's an infertility specialist. She's been heading the Haryana Society, Obs and Gynae Society, Endoscopy Society, and active in ISAR and everywhere. And then next is Dr. Arun Barua, who is from Assam, and he's also IG committee member. Then Kanika Sekhri, she's our own BLK hospital MRI specialist. I can say, and she is the person behind our surgeries because we can discuss her every case. She's too happy to discuss even outside films if we show her without any particular interest, and she will discuss thoroughly and tells us where and what is expected regarding endometriosis, adenomyosis, and the fibroids. Then, of course, you all have seen Dr. Richa Sharma just now. She's AOGD endoscopy committee chairperson. She's from GTB Hospital. And Dr. Mala Raj from Chennai, she's also with me, IHE committee member. Welcome, Dr. Mala. Dr. Ashwath Kumar, a very dynamic and smiling person from Kerala. He's also IIG committee member. And Dr. Poonam Khera, who is Associate Director at BL Kapoor Hospital and in our department. So I'm fortunate to have you all with us, and let's have a superb discussion today. Dr. Pragnesh, please go ahead.
So thank you very much, madam, for a kind words. Sorry.
Anything?
No, Dr. Ashwath Kumar is
yes, I am here.
He is there, madam.
Okay, because he was not mute. Yeah,
I now sorry. Now I am audible. Okay, thank you. I was trying to tell many things during the last discussion also, but not able to because I was mute by the host actually. Okay, thank you.
So, madam, should I start?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. Humble request to answer all the panelists in a shortly, and allow others to answer relevant discussion. Do not speak simultaneously to avoid a crowding. Raise your hand and concern to add the relevant points to participate in discussion. Amit, just let me see the face of all in a screen so I can see the raised hand and I can request them to answer. During discussion, do not repeat the answer which has already been said by someone. So we don't want a repetition and you want to save the time so we can complete most of the things which we have desired to do it. And I request all attendees to send your queries in a chat box. So Madam Dinesh will tell the queries in a relevant case or discussion for answering them by all learned panelists. So just I'll start with the first case, adolescent young patient, not girl, patient at 22 years old nulliparous woman presented with severe and worsening dysmenorrhea, with cramps, irregular menstrual cycle with excessive bleeding since menarche occurred 4 years ago. These were insufficiently relieved by medical treatment. Means naturally, people tried with mefenamic acid, tranexamic acid, COC, NSAID, but that's not means she was not fairly with medical treatment. May I request to start a discussion what you will recommend for this patient, Dr. Arun, for starting ball to roll.
Yeah. Thank you and good evening to every one of you, those who have tuned in. I think this particular scenario is pretty common, and very often in the society we take it as a normal phenomena because the mothers, mother-in-laws and everywhere, every household will come down and say ये तो होता ही है, तुम थोड़ा इसको सहन कर लो, थोड़ा सा गर्म पानी का बैग ले लो, एक दो दवा लेके देख लो. But we the clinicians cannot sit idle. We know that if this dyspareunia is worsening, if it is progressive, we need to find a cause. And obviously, the adenomyosis that we are all talking about could come in. Endometriosis will definitely roll in our mind first. But at the same time, we have to resort to different investigative module along with the history taking. Now, in this investigation, as usual, has been the bread and butter. I think ultrasound will play a pivotal role. Transvaginal ultrasound may be very difficult in this adolescent girl, but a transrectal would be fine. But anyway, we should go all out, maybe even an MRI, to find out what exactly could be the cause in this young adolescent, because this sort of discomfort is bound to make her cripple throughout her rest of her reproductive years. So we need to think too many things. Maybe one by one we need to rule out. And sometimes it may not be possible to clinch a diagnosis. Yes, there are certain uncommon things which could come up now, like rudimentary horns, congenital other malformation, or even some sort of ECM, accessory and cavitary uterine lesions could also be responsible for this. So all summing up together, what I would do is counsel the patient, investigate her thoroughly, clean the diagnosis, then give her specific therapy. But at the same time, please give her little comfort for the pain as well. That would be my...
Now, Dr. Arun, what
I want
happened
to
in this
add
case?
something.
Just a minute, madam. See, unfortunately, what had happened, couple of gynecologists has seen the patient, but it was a normal size uterus, no tenderness, and sonography was also showing a normal uterine volume. Over is normal. So, I think, do you think that we should recommend MRI to every such cases of normal uterus? Please, madam, Richa, madam, go ahead with the discussion. What you recommend in this case? So just please concentrate on this case.
So before going on to the imaging modalities, first a good general physical examination also is required in this patient. If she is a married woman, we should do a perispeculum and PV examination also before going for a radiological.
Normal, madam, in this case. Okay.
Sir, can I answer? Pragnesh sir, can I answer? Dr. Ashwath here.
Please, doctor.
It's a not normal, no need of an MRI, but you should have a 3D ultrasound, sir. See, if a normal ultrasound, and the ultrasound should be done with an expert, done by an expert, and it should be a 3D ultrasound with Doppler. So the new classification, there are about 8 signs and all these things have come for adenomyosis. So where they have to look into that myometrium as well as the junctional zone, like junctional zone cyst, irregular junctional zone, gaps in the junctional zone, then vascularity, seeing the vascularity. So a 3D ultrasound with Doppler, they say that gives equal results with MRI. So you don't have to go for MRI, which is a very costly thing. A 3D ultrasound may be enough in this case. Your case, investigation point of view, that is what you asked.
Right. The same patient, after the diagnosis by expert person, a irregular counter and possibility of adenomyosis or a localized cystic adenoma around the endometrial junctional zone, patient was treated with the GnRH analog and COC with the pain resolution. Then she reported having started with COC for 2 years ago with her married and sex life began, and she never underwent any surgery, any abortion or trauma, and her family history was unremarkable. Now, I think this is a case exactly been talked by Dr. Ashwath, but I want Dr. Kanika should, she's a radiologist in BLK Institute. Which are the sonographic findings, clues, and in MRI should, means there are three questions, madam. Number one, important clues in a sonography, number one. Number two, when we should recommend to go for MRI. As Dr. Ashwath has said, we cannot recommend in every case. Okay, but there are selective cases where one should recommend MRI. So, madam, will you just focus on MRI findings? These are the three questions. Let the madam finish. If anything left after her discussion, any of you can add on it. Please, madam, go ahead.
Dr. Kanika, unmute yourself.
Madam, will you just explain? Madam, hai idhar ki
Madam
nahi hai?
is mute. Madam is there. She is mute. Please, host, unmute her.
Madam, unmute karo.
मैम प्लीज अनम्यूट योरसेल्फ।
Amit, unmute karo beta.
नहीं सर, उनकी कनेक्शन प्रॉब्लम है मैम, प्लीज।
हाँ, तो फिर इसमें आप कोई बोलो, एनी पैनलिस्ट, चलो छोड़ो, कनिका मैडम नहीं तो इट्स ओके. I think anybody can, Ashwath has already said, don't repeat, but if you can add on this, anybody else can, if you want to add on this.
Kanika, speak.
So the most important thing is the junctional zone, sir. So the irregularity in the junctional zone is the first marker for us to find out that
Yes, Mala, please, yeah.
that particular girl is developing adenomyosis. So it can be either a thick junctional zone or irregularity in the junctional zone, apart from all the other features which were quoted by Dr. Ashwath. So that will be the earliest sign. So this particular girl, though the ultrasound was showing normal in the earlier pictures, now slowly she is developing the other features of a thickening of the junctional zone. So that will be the earliest feature for us, so that we can start her with other kind of treatment. So that is why she has responded very well to GnRH analogs and all those things.
Sir, can I tell that 8 signs? Because I thought madam will tell. I am telling the 8 signs in ultrasound. See, this is called the Musa criteria, which has the latest criteria. That is called the morphological uterus sonographic assessment in adenomyosis. It has 8 signs are asymmetrical myometrial thickening, myometrial cyst, hyperechoic islands, fan-shaped shadowing, echogenic subendometrial lines and buds, translucinal lesional vascularity, irregular junctional zone, and an uninterrupted junctional and interrupted junctional zone. Okay, for the presence of 2 or more of this criteria, they say the diagnosis of adenomyosis, and it is done by a 3D ultrasound. This is the latest criteria, ultrasound criteria, Musa criteria it is called, for adenomyosis.
Okay, Ashwath, wonderful, you have means enumerated. So anybody who is having a grayscale sonography, they can, if you have good machine quality and this. Now tell me the advantage of color flow study. Tell me the indication where you will recommend MRI, and then we'll go for MRI clues. So whether the color Doppler will help or not, and when you will recommend MRI. Anybody from panelists?
Kanika madam has now unmute. Madam, Kanika madam.
So I have a small presentation. Can I show the MRI features? And
please, madam, go ahead. Please, madam. With sonography, I think MRI your role. Amit, you have to do a presentation of Kanika madam. Mera niche rakh do.
Yeah. I'm sharing.
Don't show my presentation.
Yeah, you can share your screen. Automatically, the other goes away.
Can I start? Can you see my screen, ma'am?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'll be just telling you brief highlight what is the role of MRI. So as you know, adenomyosis is ectopic endometrium within the myometrium. So that's how a normal uterus looks on. Yeah. Can you see my slides now?
Yes, madam. You can see beautifully.
This is how a normal MRI uterus looks on an MR. So the central bright thing is the endometrium. The outer layer, this is the junctional zone. This is normally dark on a T2 weighted sequence. It has a very smooth margins. And And intermediate signal intensity, this is the outer myometrium. This is how a normal uterus looks like. So in adenomyosis, junctional zone is very important. So that's the normal uterus. Normally, in a normal uterus, the junctional zone is less than 8 millimeter in thickness. This is how you measure the junctional zone. And what happens in adenomyosis, the junctional zone thickens. So this is the dark T2 smooth line. It has enlarged in size and it is bulging into the outer myometrium. It has a smooth, it has an irregular lining. So what are the MR features of adenomyosis? One is the uterus will be very large. It will be asymmetric uterus. Then you have thickened junctional zone. Usually the maximum junctional zone thickness is 12 millimeter. And then you see multiple bright foci within the junctional zone. So that's how you see bright foci within the junctional zone in a case of adenomyosis. These are the axial sections of the uterus. You see very nicely bright foci, and this is a T2 weighted sequence and another T1 weighted sequence. If you see bright foci within it, that means it is blood. So anything which is bright on T1 weighted sequence, it means there is hemorrhage within these cysts. So, but what happens when the junctional zone thickness is between 8 to 12 millimeters? So there are certain criteria. This is how you interpret an MR. You measure the thickness of the junctional zone and whole of the myometrium. If the maximum thickness of the junctional zone is more than 40% of the total myometrium, or you have poor definition of the borders, means at the junctional zone and outer myometrium, it is very irregular, and you see bright foci within the junctional zone, then you think of adenomyosis. So, Sir has already told you about the transvaginal and the 3D to MR, very much biased to diagnose this. And he has already told all the ultrasound findings. And in color Doppler, in adenomyosis, you see increased vascularity as compared to a leiomyoma, in which you see peripheral vascularity around a leiomyoma. Then you have certain association of adenomyosis with hormone-dependent pathologies. So this is now, I discussed the features of MRI of adenomyosis, thick junctional zone, irregular interface with outer myometrium. You see T2 hyperintense foci. Whereas, how do you see a leiomyoma? A very well circumscribed T2 hyperintense lesion. So that's a leiomyoma along with adenomyosis. Then you can have association of endometriosis with adenomyosis. Here the uterus is again showing thickened junctional zone, cyst, adenomyosis, plus a hemorrhagic left adnexal lesion, which, as I told you, anything what is bright on T1 is hemorrhage. So it's a hemorrhagic left adnexal lesion with adenomyosis or endometriosis. You can have, then there are different types of adenomyosis. One is diffuse, involving whole of the junctional zone. So that's, you can see uterus, the junctional zone is very thick, involving anterior fundal region as well as posterior junctional zone. Another case, companion case of diffuse adenomyosis. As compared to focal adenomyosis, it involves only a part of the junctional zone. So see here, only the posterior wall, you can see a thickened junctional zone with cyst. So this is focal. Rest in the fundal as well as in the anterior junctional zone is normal. So these are the coronal sections. Anterior junctional zone is normal. The posterior shows a focal adenomyosis. You can have a polypoidal adenomyoma. This is a case here. There is adenomyosis involving all of the walls, plus a polypoidal lesion which is bulging into the endometrial cavity. So that's a polypoidal adenomyoma. So when interpreting adenomyosis, what is important is to know the menstrual history, the LMP of the patient, because the junctional zone appears slightly thickened when the in the menstrual phase or in the early proliferative phase. In the postmenopausal patients also, junctional zone is not distinct. And in cases of transient uterine contractions, sometimes what junctional zone appears thickened, but if you see the other subsequent images, it disappears. So everything in totality has to be interpreted. And one important thing is the association of endometriosis with adenomyosis. Here, if both of them are present in a patient, it reduces the accuracy of MR in staging CA endometrium. The depth of invasion looks much more than it actually is. So only in those cases, contrast MRI is required. Otherwise, in adenomyosis, a plain MRI is sufficient in diagnosing it. Thank you.
Thank you, madam. Thank you very much. Dr. Jyoti, will you just tell us what you feel that, because you are getting IVF patient, so I'm asking that in which cases, Dr. Ashwath is saying that in most of the cases, if you are expert in TVS with color Doppler, the way madam is described, you should able to recognize adenomyosis or adenomyoma. Now, in which cases you will recommend MRI? Will you recommend in all cases? This is not BLK for everyone.
We don't recommend MRI in all cases, only because we already do ultrasounds ourselves. So we have seen the patient. We see whether how severe the adenomyosis is. And definitely, if we have, as Dr. Kanika has very well stressed on the junctional zone.
No, that is fine. Don't repeat, madam. मैं ये पूछ रहा हूँ, in which case you would recommend MRI? So patient means one should go carry your message कि किस में MRI कराना चाहिए. ये मेरा question है.
Only when you're planning for a surgery, you should do an
Yes, Malaraj. Yes, please.
Otherwise, it is not needed, sir. If it is going to be a...
So even though if you are planning for surgery, will recommend MRI in all cases or...
Much better, and more so when it is an infertility patients, so that we can plan our surgery. So because we'll have a very clear picture whether it is going to be a diffuse adenomyoma or it is going to be a localized adenomyoma, so that our plan of surgery will be very clear rather than being in for surprises. Of course, 3D ultrasound also helps us to show us a picture, but then when we want real concrete surgery for such patients, especially when they are to do with the fertility, I think it is we should not compromise on anything. MRI is...
Yes, Dr. Ashwath. Anybody else want to add?
If we are doing the scan also, you see, we can have an expert radiologist or ourselves, we do the scan with a Doppler. We will be before plan all surgeries, whatever as a guy, whatever surgeries we plan, I prefer to do my scan myself. And by comparing, one of my PG did a study comparing this MRI with the ultrasound, and finally what madam told the same, there was not much difference at the end. So initially I used to do the same thing. I used to write MRI for all the patients before surgery. Now I don't write for the last 1 year after that study was conducted.
So you mean to say you should not recommend MRI?
And not that, sir, it is enough. The most of the findings, if you are done by, see, it should be a good radiologist, which you believe that in your place, not that it should be done.
You should also have a good ultrasound machine. That is also very mandatory. Because not all centers have a good machine also. Like if, many gynecologists are doing their own ultrasound, but it doesn't mean that everyone has a high-end machine.
Expert, yeah. True.
Well, you can take expert radiologist who can do it. It should be done by an expert radiologist also.
Okay. So we will just discuss during infertility case, in which case we should recommend MRI. So let's go to the next case.
IVF failure, if we are having recurrent IVF failure and that patient...
Yes, that is something which is, that we'll see in a case. Madam, next case we are discussing. Okay, can we go to the PPT presentation, Amit?
You will have to share your screen again.
No, I have done. Can you see my presentation?
No, sir, we cannot see your presentation.
You will have to share again.
So, and show karke, I have to share again.
Go back, click
I'll just do that.
Green button.
Yes. Now, can you see?
Yes, now it is coming. Yes, just come.
Okay, so
just make it full screen. Full screen. It is the 7th slide right now. Make it full screen.
But yeah, this is not allowing me to do it because there are either I don't know.
The next one, yes, this is
Okay,
yes.
okay, Abhi, chalo. So I think next is we have already discussed. Now, what had happened in this case? Now, this is what exactly we wanted to know. We have discussed in this case. We have seen that patient has taken a gene analog for 6 months. Do you think she can go on taking a gene analog? No. So I think in such event, what you will counsel and what you will do if there is associated endometriosis? Anybody?
Sir, other than GNRH, see, you cannot take GNRH for a prolonged course. See, this patient, if she is not continuing fertility, is not her concern. Imagine. So, such a young age, we don't recommend surgery as the first option. So, I prefer to give this patient on long-term Dynogest actually. So, initially, if you started at the GNRH, as it cannot be prolonged, Dynogest can be given for. I have patients who is taking Dynogest for 3 to 4 years. So, young patients who are unmarried and not having adenomyosis, how much it will be respond to some extent, there will be relief of pain. If they are not, we are not opting for surgery. So that is what my concept in this. And Dynogest is one drug which I prefer.
Right. I think. Yes, please, madam.
Yes, sir. Then if patient can afford, we can go for HIFU also, sir. That is high intensity focused ultrasound. That also gives a very good result. Around pain cure is 95% success rate. So that other
no, RCT, madam, there may be isolated cases. What she's saying, what he's saying is correct. In this case, either you have to give a Dynogest or a COC and you have to relieve the pain, and you must ask them that she should not delay marriage and pregnancy. That is very important. As early that she should plan, and if she wants to delay for a couple of years, then they should be on a Dynogest. So this is what, or a COC, and they have to try different molecule which works for pain relief and good quality of life and earliest fertility. So I think that is what. Anything else anybody wants to add?
This particular patient, I think GnRH analog should not be have tried in the first instance, because that should have been the last resort. Because of other side effects like the bone loss and other things, Dynogest is a better molecule in adolescent girls, especially when they have pain. Because GnRH analogs is very good for menorrhagia, but pain is the concern. Dynogest is a better molecule, and it can be taken for a longer period of time. We could have started here with Dynogest and allowed her to continue until she could have got married. Then probably after that, if she's not getting pregnant, then the GnRH analogs could have been added for her to assist in conception. So that would have been a management in such a scenario.
Yes. Now there is another case. Means adolescent girl, there is a space occupying lesion in the uterus. A 20 years old unmarried female presented with severe dysmenorrhea and pelvic pain, and extending up to right lumbar regions is 1 year. Except dysmenorrhea, menstrual normal, unmarried. Sonography and MRI reports suggest 3.6 by 2.6 by 2.2 centimeter lesion in the uterus. And these were the differential diagnosis when this SL was found. And this was the picture. If anybody can interpret, I don't know, Kanika ji, Dr. Kanika or anybody wants to interpret this. This is the case-based study I have taken in one of the patient. So if anybody can see that, what is seen in this case.
So
you can see one filled with some looks like, see, if you don't see it clearly, it looks like that it's a separate swelling from the uterus. Okay. And it's filled with, looks like something like, if you are not careful, it looks like a endometrioma on one side. Okay. But the ovary follicle is seen separately. So it's in the, if it is in the myometrial cavity, you can have what you told, sir. It can be a degenerated fibroid. More than that, a cystic mass with probably something, even an acum. Acum can be a diagnosis, differential diagnosis.
Right. So this was a case, and when we took the patient for laparoscopy, see what is this was the picture was seen very correctly as said. It was some cystic lesion posteriorly on the posterior myometrium, and then I don't know whether you can see this.
We are seeing the MRI pictures.
We are seeing the hysteroscopy.
Now, can you see this? This is the lesion here, posteriorly. Can you see the lesion here?
We are seeing, sir, posterior.
Yes. So, initially this was described as a cystic, but SUM, we'll come to that another case, and I'll explain you that now the things little has been streamlined and standardized, and what should be the way of looking at space occupying lesion. Now, why I'm saying this? Recently, we were discussing that surgery should be avoided. Now, let me share with you, this was a one case where everything has been tried and pain was not relieved. And then we were compelled to do surgery. So one of the important points here is when you are, doing a such case, these are the places where sometimes when you're operating on an unmarried girl, you may always want to confirm with MRI. So this is another place where you always feel that, TV is not possible and abdominal sonography is not conclusive, then, or a doubtful, or they are so much ready to spend CT, MRI, anything. And this is where, when you are planning to take a decision of surgery, okay, so normal myometrium, myometrial hyperplasia, and the total cyst should be excised. Otherwise, there is a possibility of recurrence. So what you have to do is, you have to excise it completely. And more important is, you have to repair it in a best possible perfect way, so she may not develop rupture uterus when she had a pregnancy. So this is what, the kind of the cyst which was in the posterior uterine wall, which was it can do a pinpoint hemostasis, and you can repair this defect with whatever way you want to do it. But then it is very important that you do a repairing of this, and this is the one indication where sometimes, and it gives excellent result. Let me tell you, 4 years of this surgery was done 4 years back at our place, and she's fine. And this was a past case I was just trying to share with you. So anyway, with this background, there is another case. Let me share with you a 21 years old unmarried female presented with severe dyspnea and chronic palate pain, cyst menarche, aggravated in last 2 years, and unmarried girl, painful periods, and treated with medical treatment, a lot of other things also, OC peel and gene analog also, and so many things. And then this was the picture. Now you can see that this was the uterus, and this was the picture. Again, a space occupying lesion, which was a 3 by 3.6 centimeter in expert sonography. And then this was the, differential diagnosis. Okay, and then what people have realized, this was the MRI findings. If anybody wants to interpret this, this was attached to the uterus and near the round ligament, and this was the junctional zone, and the different findings we already discussed. We have done discussion, and then again this was
before
a mass
laparoscopy, sir. Can I add one point? Whenever see this this is something looks like an acum, that is different, but whenever you have a diagnosis, characteristically it is seen on the most of the time on the right side near the right round ligament. See, when you do a scan, if a cystic lesion is seen, it is usually seen at the usually, I don't know the reason, right side near the right round ligament. If all the panelists have the same opinion, you can.
Yes.
Yeah,
so
but how can we rule out a Mullerian duct anomaly like a rudimentary horn on these images?
It's a type of Mullerian, madam. It's now classified as a type of Mullerian anomaly itself. This acum is one of the Mullerian anomaly now, madam. So the difference is only by when you put a laparoscope, only you will see the difference. Otherwise, it is difficult to say the difference through the scan, actually, usually.
Yeah, with a rudimentary horn, we can't differentiate blood products in a rudimentary horn. which is not communicating. We can't differentiate this from acute.
Yes, so you have to do hysteroscopy, you have to do a laparoscopy, and then very correctly said, you have to have all four possibility of cystic fibroid, degenerated, or a rudimentary horn, non-communicating, or this should be kept in mind. Important point is this entity has been defined today, and very correctly madam has said, otherwise normal, means the important point is these are the patients less than 30 years of age, number one, severe dysmenorrhea, and I think this entity needs to be classified and understood. And most important thing is the difference between middle-aged patient is it is uniformly in the uterus, means around the endometrial junctional zone, and this is described previously. These are the three different kind of a cystic adenomyoma or cavitated adenomyoma or cavitated myas, different but these are the Indian, Dr. Jain and Kripalani has reported these cases. A lot of people have reported these cases. So just to summarize this, we'll go to the next case. SUM is a rare, but nowadays been recognized frequently. This is a one entity which can be surgically really helps in a promising results. MRI is really helpful in these cases in differentiating different differential diagnosis. So now let's go to the another scenario. Patient occupying lesion in the uterus, a 25 years old patient with abdominal abnormal uterine bleeding, not dysmenorrhea, abnormal uterine bleeding since 6 months, primary infertility. So with active married life of 1 year, also wanted a pregnancy, and per abdominal showing a 16 to 18 weeks, 20 week size uterus. And then we took the patient for, when they did a sonography, it was showing a 6.5 by 6.8 centimeter fibroid, and started with the fibroid, means myomectomy, with the provisional diagnosis of fibroid, and with dissection, see what has happened. So this is what I think, just I want everyone to share that with the preoperative diagnosis of fibroid, and then during dissection only. I know expert sonography, everything we have discussed, but in everyone's life and practice, ye hua hi hai. That is what I'm very sure that just as sabko, everyone has a one case of perforation in MTP. Same way for all laparoscopic surgeon, you had experience of one case of fibroid. When you put an incision, you find adenomyosis. So I want every panelist to discuss their experience in their life, so everyone can understand what should be the way one should do intraoperative and postoperative.
So
meanwhile, you can see the video. Yes.
So this is very common, sir. In fact, see, because many a times we do not do an MRI, and sometimes most of the times we will be thinking it is a fibroid. But then the moment we inject pitocin itself, we'll be able to identify that it is not a fibroid and it is an adenomyosis. So with injection of pitocin, if it is a fibroid, the pitocin will beautifully go into all the planes. So, yes. And it will be to enucleate. But if it is going to be an adenomyosis, that point only we can say that it is an adenomyosis, because the injection will be very hard. It will be like hitting on a stone. So you will not be able to inject pitocin also properly. So that itself will give us a clue that we are dealing with an adenomyosis and not a fibroid. But whatever said and done, now that this patient has been posted for surgery, we have to proceed with the surgery. So we have to decide how exactly to enucleate it. So based on whether it is a diffuse adenomyosis or a generalized adenomyosis, we have to plan our site of incision and see how to enucleate this mass. Because here, unlike fibroid, enucleation also is very tricky because it doesn't have a capsule. And at the same time, we also have to enucleate in such a way that we leave adequate amount of space in the myometrium, in the serosa. That is, at least minimum 5 millimeters should be there in the serosa so that we can approximate it beautifully. And also the tissues are going to be very, very hard and friable. So we have to remove as much as possible of these adenomyotic tissues. So the consistency of the tissue will help us to identify it. Earlier, they said only with laparotomy we can identify the adenomyotic tissues. Now, with the help of our instruments itself, we are able to appreciate the nature of the tissues. We know which are the tissues are adenomyotic and which is the normal myometrium. The moment we reach the normal myometrium, you can see the myometrium becoming pink. Otherwise, the tissues are going to be pale and white. And also you'll have this chocolate material. So we have to ensure that we can excise as much of the adenomyotic tissue as possible, so that we will be able to give adequate pain relief for these patients, because even some amount of excision of the adenomyotic tissue will give dramatic relief from pain for these patients. So, but we should take an opportunity to exercise as much as possible, and also suture in such a way that we are able to approximate the entire dead space and suture it in layers. Various techniques are available. Depending upon how one exactly is comfortable, they can suture it. So I generally do the triple flap, the T-shape incision, where I excise the entire adenomyotic tissue and suture them in flaps, so that the entire dead space is also occluded and you have a very good integrity of the scar.
Anybody else? Share your experience.
And ultimately, it's also a good practice to put the entire tissue in a bag and remove it, because these adenomyotic tissues are very
Sir, can I
friable.
add to it?
Open morcellation.
Yes, sir. Ashwath here. Can I add to it?
Yes, yes. Please. Please go ahead.
Sir, can I add to it?
Yes, yes. Please go ahead.
Pragnesha, sir.
Yes, yes. Go ahead.
To share one experience what you told for the audience. See, I had a patient in which it was ultrasound showed one subserous projecting fibroid, 4 into 5 centimeter, and one intramural fibroid of 5 into 7 centimeter. Okay. So I started, first I removed it, the projecting fibroid I removed, pitrazine was given, for projecting fibroid I removed. Then in the initial stage itself, when I was injecting into the myometrium, anyway, this outside fibroid blanched, there was only patchy over the uterus. So I had some confusion. Then I thought, let me remove the one fibroid. So the main fibroid which was projecting was removed. Then I started on the other fibroid, thinking that is a fibroid. I'm not getting plain. So one thing I wanted to tell you is that there can be associated in multiple fibroids also experience. There can be associated one fibroid and next fibroid. Then next experience, in the continuing experience, is that I was not able to cut that tissue. Can you imagine? With harmonic and I used monopolar needle to cut it into it. And it became so difficult. It looked like something stony hard. Imagine the laparoscopy had to be abandoned in this case, and laparotomy was done. It was something like a stone. That adenomyoma was something like a stone. It was so, and that is one experience. So it can be associated rarely. See, calcification and all, calcified adenomyoma rarely you see. The second point is that, see, as madam correctly told, we have to, how far we have to go. That is the most important. How far means how deep we have to go. We all have to know that, see, you have to reach up to the, never reach up to the endometrial cavity, up to the, as far as possible, maintain the junctional zone, some tissue. Sometimes it's not possible. So in difficult cases, what I do is that I perforate the uterus with a sound from below. Then I know that it is a, see, one small perforation doesn't matter at all. Then I know that I am near, this is the cavity. Otherwise, in a diffuse adenomyosis, many times you will not be able to reach the cavity. Okay. Then the third point, what I want for the audience is that, see, you don't have to, even if it's an infertility patient, don't think that you have to remove the whole. It is not possible. In sometimes in a diffuse adenomyoma, if you remove like that, there will not be uterus at all. So remove about more than 50%. Okay. So you remember, like more than 50% you remove, and then you try your GnRH and suppress it, then give HMG or FSH and IUI many times, or you send the patient for your, if you have IVF, that is the best option. You can have IVF or send the patient. These are from a few of my experiences, sir.
So what about postoperative counseling for this patient? Fertility
can I
symptoms,
add one thing, sir? Like
recurrence and abnormal. Yes, madam, please.
Sir, yes. I just want to add, sir, he is good enough in doing the perforation and then identifying the tissues and all. What we do is, like, we put the intrauterine Foley's catheter inflated. We inflate with 3 ml of distilled water, and then we try to do the resection. Then also very helpful in doing, rather doing the blind and then entering the cavity. So that is the one option.
You can
I think, Dr. Ashwath, what we do at our place is we use a good uterine manipulator. See,
Yes.
and it has got a rod. So classically, rectovaginal endometriosis can be addressed if you antivert the uterus so nicely. And so when you are doing a dissection on adenomyoma, if you start seeing the rod will, when you will try to antivert, it may little perforate, but then it will give you idea, now this is the cavity. So
That
these are
is
the
what I
different
told,
tricks
sir.
of learning the, yes.
One case, what happened was that, sir, why I had started perforating, one case, what happened was that after doing surgery, can you imagine, the whole cavity was in my hand. See,
Right.
the whole endometrial cavity was with me, with my over enthusiasm was doing surgery. That is,
Yeah.
after that I understood that, see, if you don't identify the cavity, then as Dr. Richard told correctly, some way you have to identify. Pragna sir told, use a proper manipulator. So
Yes.
there is a concept of not to perforate is wrong. See, sometimes unless you perforate, you may not be able to reach where the cavity is. You have to go up to the junctional zone. Otherwise, it is going to recur.
So when
And
we
I think very important, another point is a good preoperative mapping. Now, what you mean by mapping, you have to tell your radiologist, tell me the distance of localized.
oh, sir, you are muted.
Sir, you are got muted. Pragnesha sir. Pragnesha sir, muted.
Hello.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
now okay.
So you have to do expert mapping. Now, why mapping? In terms of, you have to ask your radiologist the distance between localized adenomyoma from endometrium and serosa, right or lateral, or anterior fundal or posterior wall, which has been given by drawing. So you know exactly where you are likely to put adhesions and address the not entering into the cavity. You can even delineate this with the methylene blue also. That also helps you. The moment the blue part comes out, you can make out that cavity. So there are different tricks to find out. But my question now is, post-operative counseling for fertility, recurrence of bleeding and dysmenorrhea. If somebody can answer this, so we can go to the next case.
This is a very progressive disease, adenomyosis. So counseling plays a very, very major role. So the moment we know it is adenomyosis, immediately we have to start counseling her, saying that the chances of recurrence are there because by the nature of the disease, it is a progressive condition, unlike a fibroid. So we have to be anticipating all those issues. If fertility is a major issue, then we put her on GnRH analogs for 6 months so that we'll also have an adequate time for the wound to heal. So by 6 months, we can do a MRI scan. At the end of the 6 months, do an MRI scan or a good Doppler to see, no need MRI scan, do a good Doppler to see the vascular supply to the suture site. If the blood flow to the suture site is very good, then that time the woman is ready for to start her conception. So that is the time when you should allow her to get pregnant. So maximum it takes 6 months. There are instances when they take even 1 year, depending upon how we suture. So after the vascularity is well established, you can advise her to get pregnant. So this kind of a counseling should be done adequately for that patient after the surgery.
Sir,
Nisha madam, Nisha Kapoor madam.
Yes, sir. I just wanted to discuss the point of starting GnRH agonists after surgery for adenomyoma, especially once the cavity is open. Does it impair the healing? Because it is the approximation and the tissue pliability is not as good as in a fibroid, when we repair after a fibroid. So does starting GnRH agonist soon after surgery, will it impair the healing of healing process, and should we start it after 2-3 months? And what should be the gap between the adenomyosis surgery and the next, fertility treatment?
Yeah, so
madam,
I think it's minimum 3 months. And madam, there are two. If fertility is desired, then very correctly I said gene analog, and for 3 months you can wait, and then IVF and go ahead. And if she doesn't want a pregnancy, Dinoges or Fridays,
So can
OCP.
I add one point on GnRH analogs now? See, fertility is an issue. The reason current literature says that GnRH analogs produces a hypoestrogenic condition. So when we are treating an infertility patient with GnRH analogs, because of this hypoestrogen condition, there is a fair chance for them to develop endometritis. So bacterial contamination and endometritis is more in women who have been treated with GnRH analogs. So that is why now we have a real, we are in a real dilemma whether to add GnRH analogs in an infertile patient just before we could start, we could transfer the embryos or any fertility treatment. So that is
sir,
a,
can I
Dr.
add-
Jyoti Malik, can you
add
have
to
your
what
opinion?
But I think the post-surgery GnRH is the good option for
So-
3 to 6 months because it keeps the lesions, whatever is growing, if at all, also suppressed for 3 to 6 months, and then let her conceive by ART. I think that is
Sir,
the best option.
That is what.
What I would like to add is that here after surgery, one can straight away go in for IVF, do a two-staged IVF here. Rather, we do because we want to do the ovarian stimulation with a long protocol. We want to do pickup, freeze the embryos, and then give the GnRH so that then the uterus becomes, the volume becomes less, and this thing of endometritis that subsides. And then after 3 months or so, once once we are confirmed that the scar has healed well with a Doppler, then we can do the frozen embryo transfer. So we are
Sir,
not wasting
what-
time.
I
Here
think
we have
that is
to-
more suitable for the patient who are 30, 35
what-
means
No,
advanced
no.
age.
That is
But
what
for-
in a long infertility, what I do is that my
patients
friends
who
are
undergo
IVF
IVF.
specialists. What they send to me
Yes.
for before even if I am going to do a case of diffuse adenomyosis, what first I do is that I send them to the IVF specialist, and they, as you told, embryo is freezed, okay, and kept.
Yes.
Then they come
Yes.
to me, then I do the surgery. Okay. Then, as you told, then I do the surgery. Then after 3 months or 6 months, see, if you have done a proper closure, you are confident as a laparoscopic surgeon after doing many years, you are confident. Then after 3 months, actually 3 to 6 months is the ideal. After 6 months, you transfer that embryo. So whatever, even if there is a associated any difficulty or you are adherent ovaries, all these things are there, and you feel that it will dissection and all these things will decrease the vascularity and all these things, ovary. So I prefer to take and keep the ovum as well as embryo, freeze the embryo before surgery in this case of long period of infertility with adenomyosis.
and the embryo transfer should be single. It's better to avoid multiple pregnancies. So that you have to mind.
But then even then, sir, even we keep the eggs frozen and do the surgery, but post-surgery also hormonal treatment is required in these patients, sir.
Then you
So
can do. See, then you
GnRH
can
or
do the surgery.
ultimately or any other hormone that we have to keep the lesion suppressed. So post-surgery, we cannot leave the patient like that. We have to prescribe some
You
hormonal
have to
treatment.
give the confusion here was give the
By 3 to 6
GnRH
months
or
when
not.
she's going
That
to
was the
conceive.
confusion. See, if you have done the frozen, so there is nothing to do with the deal with the, now you have taken the ovum, everything is being kept before itself. So you are
If
not
patient is
concerned.
affording, you can do a frozen and right. So should we go to the next case?
Yes, sir.
Yes, there's a 32 years patient, primary infertility with mild primary dysmenorrhea and HSC, semen report, sexual relations, everything was normal. She had in sonography and clinical examination found chocolate cyst and some endometriosis. And I think I wanted to, along with the adenomyoma or adenomyosis, what should be seen in a case of endometriosis, Dr. Jyoti Malik, to explore while doing sonography.
We have to take care of, we have to see the ovarian reserve in these cases because adenomyosis is always associated with mostly these endometriosis. So we have to also see the ovaries there, the ovarian reserve in those cases of infertility. And this is something, I think that is the only thing which we have to also rule out. And
now, can somebody describe the issues of patient having adenomyoma or adenomyosis, and in terms of pregnancy loss, bad obstetric history, or what kind of counseling patient should be done, because when patient is spending money for laparoscopy surgery and IVF, they expect a lot of things from you. So anybody?
There is a higher incidence of pregnancy loss. So they are prone for recurrent pregnancy loss, implantation failure. So even if they get pregnant also, there is a fair chance of spontaneous abortions and also placental abnormalities because of the breach in the endomyometrial junction. So there is a chance for them to develop placenta accreta. And if suppose if she had gone in for surgery, chances of scar rupture and all those things. The most important thing is, like, I can share one very good experience from my patient for whom she had a very extensive adenomyoma and endometriosis. I had done an IVF. She did very bad looking endometrial cavity, and but still she managed to get pregnant. So I had to do a cesarean section. After cesarean section, after delivering the baby, the uterus, the myometrium was like hard, like rock, like how we do like for adenomyoma. Exactly, the myometrium was still like that. It wouldn't involute at all. It was really stony hard, that myometrium. Even after separating the placenta, there was no bleeding, no PPH, nothing at all. It is just that approximation of the myometrium was so difficult. So somehow I managed to suture the myometrium. But post-operatively, after 2 weeks, she came with severe pain in the abdomen and she had spiking temperatures. So she had ruptured the wound because the myometrium was really hard. I was really wondering how this lady is going to come out. But then when she went home, she was very comfortable. After 2 weeks, she came with a ruptured uterus. So that is mainly because of the rigid myometrium, which wouldn't involute. So that is again a very major complication in these women who go through pregnancies. So
Sir, can I share a recent experience?
Yes, please.
On pregnancy. See, one patient was opened. Imagine a adenomyosis with endometriosis. Surgery was done by a very good expert laparoscopic surgeon in our place. And patient became pregnant, and patient was showing a local hospital. Okay. Patient, and they planned for a cesarean. On cesarean, incision, on table, after spinal, incision was put. This surgeon in the local hospital could not enter because of it was plastered and with the bowel over this incision, because that excellent surgeon, laparoscopic surgeon, had done a terrific surgery over it, but full of it could not enter. So she called and referred the patient. Imagine, close the abdomen, cesarean patient. It happened only 2 months back, and referred the patient to me. I had such a difficult time. The incision was extended. He had put a phalangeal incision. Then I had to make it a vertical incision. Then it became T-shape. And it was totally stuck, not only to the abdominal wall with bowels. So the moral that I wanted to tell everybody is that when you are doing all these big surgeries, at least use some adhesion barriers, or see to it that too much sutures projecting, because nowadays we are all using barb sutures. So with barbs, we are putting, I am not telling that this was due to barb, but there was so much in, because I saw that then from the previous surgeon, I saw that surgery, horrific surgery, I saw that it was so many incisions, that mala 3 flap or what flaps it was done, and it was done very well. So that the patient became IVF, she became pregnant. That I agree. But it was, and then I had a very difficult time. Post-operatively, drains were put, then sepsis, and the patient was in the hospital, headache for me for 1 month. So the moral is that about that we forgot to mention in the last surgery part, adhesions. Be aware of adhesions when we are doing all these surgeries.
Right, perfect. Now, in this infertility case with adenomyoma resection, what will be the post-operative? These are the treatment given. And then Dr. Jyoti Malik, will you just tell us about when and how IVF you will protocol and other things you will recommend, and other infertility specialists?
Yeah, if we are doing a IVF for her after surgery, then definitely we have to use a long protocol for her. And the evidence says that antagonist, rather than an antagonist protocol, it is always good to have a long agonist protocol for these women. And maybe one can just use depot preparations 2 to 3 months prior to doing IVF, giving that depot GnRH analog, and then start them with IVF. Or the other way that we had already discussed previously, like doing the two-staged IVF, where we do the pickup first, then give GnRH analogs, and then do the frozen embryo transfer. In these cases, we also have to take care because the cavity has been rebuilt and all that. It is a big uterus, so we have to do a mock embryo transfer in these cases, so as to find out how long the when we are doing an embryo transfer, how big, where we have to place the embryos. Very important point is that we should always do only a single embryo transfer, as Dr. Mala was saying, because there is a lot of chance of miscarriage in these cases. Labor, pre-eclampsia, and these miscarriages. So we should not burden them with a multiple pregnancy. They should have a singleton pregnancy. So a single embryo transfer after a mock ET has to be done. And there is a very high risk of scar rupture in these cases of adenomyosis. So we have to be very careful in these cases to rule out those scar ruptures and do a elective cesarean, which as Dr. Ashwath and Dr. Mala said, the uterus is like a stone when we do these cesareans there. So it is these are the things that we have to take care of during IVF in these cases.
Okay, so in a multiple IVF failure, you have to do something by offering surgery. Now let's go forward. There is a lot of controversy regarding whether the adenomyoma should be removed laparoscopically or by a laparotomy or by hysteroscopically. So I think, and there are people who say that go for hysterectomy only. There is no chances. We have seen in our medical college, this is how they counsel. So I think let's, for this all 3 points, if somebody can discuss on this and just watch here this video, how this adenomyoma being resected from this left lateral wall. So
See, sir,
this is what the importance of mapping.
Adenomyosis, the surgery which either to go for hysteroscopic or laparoscopic surgery, I think we can classify all adenomyosis based on the Brosen classification. Like it has the acronym of muscle, which each component stands for. Like M stands for myometrial location, where the adenomyoma is located, whether it is a submucosal, intramural, or subserosal. Then U stands for where is the site, like the midline, paramedian, or lateral. S stands for the structure, like it could be a cystic, polypoid, or mixed variety. Then content, whether it is an anechoic, clear, or hemorrhagic. L stands for the level at which the adenomyosis is located, like fundus or the body or at the level of cervix. Then E component will stand for endometrial, or it will be an inner lining of endometrium. So depending upon which subtype it is. Now, if the subtype belongs to A1, that is a submucous or the intramural cystic adenomyosis, or if it is a A2 variety, which is a cystic or polypoid variety, then we can go ahead for the hysteroscopic surgery. Now, hysteroscopic surgery, the pathognomic findings for cystic adenomyosis on hysteroscopy, we see a beautiful bluish lesion will be seen, and then there will be the areas of devascularization is there, and at the time we can also see the hemorrhagic spot. Then there will be a strawberry kind of endometrium also, which can be seen. But suppose if we have a lesion which classifies to B1, that is a subserosal or a cystic adenoma, or if it is a B2 variety, which the growth is exophytic and more towards the subserosal side, or if it is like a uterine-like masses, then it is better to go for the laparoscopic route. And the hysteroscopic route, whatever we are doing it, if we combine with ultrasound also, the advantage is much better. And whenever we are resecting the mass, at least the 5 millimeters or 1 millimeters that endometrium should be left behind. So that is the thing. And most important thing, these lesions can be easily picked up if we decrease the pressure of the hysteroscope. Suppose we are working at 70 to 80 pressure, and on seeing the lesion, if we reduce the pressure to 40, then easily these lesions can be identified. So that is one another important thing.
Okay, I think my very too specific question, when laparotomy should be done and when hysterectomy should be done, I'm not saying adenomyosis. Adenomyoma I'm saying. If you want, means anybody can start discussion. shortly?
See, adenomyoma, now we all are laparoscopic surgeons. We are doing a lot of laparoscopy. So adenomyoma, most of the time we do it, tackle it effectively through the laparoscope. Only confusion comes when there's a diffuse adenomyosis. So that is the only time when I think about, and patient is concerned of infertility. Diffuse adenomyosis with infertility, till now I believe, even if I am doing all the cases through laparoscopy, but only cases with diffuse adenomyosis with infertility, I am now also preferring laparotomy. Otherwise, laparoscopy itself.
Anybody else? See, I think 3-4 very important points. If the size of the adenomyosis or adenomyoma is more than 24 weeks, I think you should do laparotomy. Don't do heroic. Okay, explain the patient it's not even worth doing. She should opt for a adenomyotic or adenomyoma uterus more than 24 week size. I don't think it will help in any way. But anyway, if you still want to do it, you should do it by laparotomy. You can see the addition. See, this is the gift of multiple laparoscopy and laparoscopy with endometriosis and adenomyoma. So fibroid endometriosis is fibrogenic condition. If you do laparotomy, it invites adhesions and it makes subsequent surgery more difficult, more complicated, and invites disturbed timo-ovarian relationship and infertility. So give a different thinking before somebody offers or think of doing it by laparotomy. Okay, now which are the now here decided to do a adenomyoma resection. Actually come to the part of which are the preoperative assessment you want to do before adenomyoma resection, laparoscopy. Somebody please start.
See, other than what ultrasound and all, AMH, madam has already, Jyoti Malik madam has, I think, already told, Dr. Jyoti Malik has told that AMH, the importance of AMH. So almost every case, you have to go for AMH. Why? Because infertility patient with a low AMH, and I may not go for adenomyomectomy at all. If it's maybe I may send directly for an IVF. Okay, so I may not do it unless the patient is a repeated IVF failure. So I may not touch that patient. Repeated IVF failure.
So it helps us in counseling the patient. If your ovarian reserve is less, you may have to give IVF. Correct. Yes. Now, number 2 question is, if patient had multiple laparoscopy and laparotomy, closed laparoscopy, and multiple intestine adhesiolysis is required to be done from the previous record, multiple IFL and referred for tubal clipping, what you will do? Will you do a tubal clipping and adenomyoma resection, or you will not do?
No, see, if it is, if they have been sent for tubal clipping only, see, I have a lot of patients because around my friends.
No, along with adenomyoma resection, because today's topic is this. So that is
adenomyoma resection now. Okay, along with adenomyoma resection, if the tubes are looking unhealthy, definitely. Otherwise, I will not do. If the tubes are looking, because after adenomyoma resection, if anything associated whether it's a tube abnormality is there, hydrosalpinx or any abnormality is there, I may clip. Otherwise, even after adenomyoma resection, there is even a chance of spontaneous conception. So I don't want to clip every tube adenomyoma resection with tubal clipping.
Right. So it depends upon age, ovarian reserve, and AMH, because patient may not like to clip her tube. So counseling is important. Now, question is, with the multiple IVF failure, when patient is referred to you, a laparoscopic surgeon, for adenomyoma resection, and patient wants assurance, warranty, and guarantee, what you will tell to your patient?
So there is no warranty here. We cannot guarantee her a result, because the implantation failures are known to occur. They are known to have a poor success rate with IVF also. So it is, one has to counsel them that it is a very, very bad disease. And even after surgery, I mean, if there is a risk of recurrence, the success rate with IVF is going to be less. And even with good quality embryos, the implantation rates are very less. So we cannot, we have to counsel them about the results, about the poor results there.
Adenomyoma, endometriosis, the quality of the oocytes are also very poor apart from the endometrium. So even with oocytes, we cannot guarantee the 100% success. So
Right.
that
Now, so regarding, so this is important that patient, you have to tell the patient. Otherwise, you know, what most of the people says, we have got 100% success. That is why I thought, let me share with you, we should not speak a sentence like this. What about assurance about pain relief?
Pain relief with adenomyomectomy, even little bit of tissue, if you remove also, they'll have dramatic pain relief. So that is why adenomyomectomy has to be done in such a situation. Not only, sometimes even with after adenomyomectomy, the marital life also seems to be improving. So they can even conceive naturally also because of the relief from pain. So
right.
That can
now
be
the crucial question is whether you will recommend TLH or adenomyoma resection if pain is predominant.
Depends on whether she has completed her family, whether she desires to, become pregnant again or not. If she has completed the family and she's not desirous of pregnancy,
is not a concern.
This thing, and if she, if she's not responding to any other things, and if she doesn't want any kind of a recurrence, then we can offer her a hysterectomy if she is above 40 years. If not, it is better to do an adenomyomectomy and still give her some chance. Depends upon what kind of
myomectomy may not relieve the pain. Sir, sometimes the myomectomy also.
Madam, 5 minutes.
Yeah,
yeah. Madam, if suppose there is a associated chalcosis, what you will do?
Sir, we have to take consent for removal of the ovaries, and because even with a hysterectomy, sometimes the pain may not be relieved if we have left in the ovaries. So we have to see if there is an endometriotic element. The consent for oophorectomy has to be taken if she needs a perfect pain relief, and then we may add on HRT.
So apart from that, the incidence of ovarian tumor also is very high in women with adenomyosis, 3 to 4-fold increase in ovarian tumor. So we have to also counsel the women and find out whether there are any risk factors for ovarian tumor. If that is the case, then it is better to remove the ovaries in case of adenomyosis if there is a strong history of ovarian cancer.
Okay. Now, if suppose you have taken case for adenomyoma, means not preoperatively diagnosed rectovaginal nodule or endometriosis, whether you will do a surgery simultaneous or not?
So rectovaginal nodule, we should have definitely identified preoperatively, sir. It cannot be decided on the table because there are many things we have to look into when we have a rectovaginal nodule. So maybe you can just remove the adenomyoma and excise how much possible, but we'll not be able to do a complete clearance of the rectovaginal nodule. Maybe you have to take it in the second sitting only. So how much ever superficially you can excise, you can excise. You have to be minimalistic in such a scenario because you're not prepared. You have not prepared the bowel well. You have not consented the patient. You have not prepared with the gastroenterologist. So all those issues have to be kept in mind. Maybe we can tap.
Madam, the thing is that there is an issue is that, see, going again, see, after you do such a surgery and then going again to remove a rectovaginal nodule is very difficult, madam. By the time the adhesions and all these things will be very difficult. What I do is that if I am seeing, evaluated, we will say. Otherwise, usually go outside, counsel the patient, counsel the relatives if they are ready with all these issues. Otherwise, personally, I am telling, if in the next sitting when you go, your surgery becomes so difficult because you have done something and then the adhesions will be too much actually. So
see, the
I
important message I want to give here is,
I'm not
important message.
Also,
just
we
a minute.
should be prepared, sir, because adenomyosis and endometriosis, they coexist. So I think preoperatively also we should be prepared that we may encounter endometriotic lesions, and also I think counseling and consent also is important, and accordingly we should prepare the patient, like this kind of patient who has a repeated surgery and had gone the implantation failure. So we should always keep endometriosis in mind. So accordingly we should counsel and do the pre-op preparations also. For
so I think important message,
so
Dr. Richa has said
complete
correctly
surgery at one time, because as Dr. Aswath has said,
Dr. Richa said very correctly, rectovaginal endometriosis is very common, and it is the need of hour that gynecologists gets awareness of doing and diagnosing it preoperatively. So I think that is something which is we really needs to, I think different techniques we already discussed, and suturing technique I wanted to discuss, but we don't have a time. So I think we need to fast forward. We have taken enough time, and I wanted to discuss NDVH also for a large uterus, but anyway, there's no time left. And thank you to all the panelists for actively contributing your scientific guidelines and suggestions and opinions.